I knew the moment they summoned me to the Innovation Center without warning that it wasn't a meeting, it was an execution. Ethan Prescott, the 42-year-old CEO who never bothered to learn my name despite my 19 years of service, sat there with a practiced smile next to Lauren from HR. The wall behind them mockingly displayed the company's slogan, "Innovation first, people always." No genuine greeting, no real apology, just corporate speak that shattered nearly 2 decades of dedication. As part of our organizational restructuring, we need to reconfigure your position. Sometimes what hurts most isn't being betrayed, it's realizing your years of loyalty had become completely invisible to them. I didn't argue or question why. My throat tightened as I gave a single nod, that controlled movement you make when you're desperately fighting to maintain dignity in public. The hallway outside the Innovation Center stretched endlessly, a gauntlet of transparent glass walls. I walked alone, stomach churning as colleagues quickly looked down at their phones the moment I passed. By the time I reached my office, the notification had already pinged on my tablet, separation agreement awaiting my digital signature, along with an NDA. Swift. Impersonal. As if I were just another outdated file to be archived. While packing my belongings into a cardboard box, my fingers touched something solid and familiar, a brass architect's compass tucked away in my drawer, the one my father had given me when I was still a student. "Find your true north," read the tiny, elegant inscription. I held it in my palm, the weight and texture instantly connecting me to who I truly was. The cool metal against my skin felt like an anchor in this storm of betrayal. I heard hushed conversations from the design floor behind me. A few colleagues risked sending sympathetic glances through the glass walls, but no one stepped forward. What could anyone possibly say to someone who had poured her heart into building this company only to be discarded like yesterday's concepts? The most painful part? I had felt this coming. Over the past 8 months, subtle changes had accumulated like toxic fumes. I was gradually transferred from sustainable design projects to profit-focused developments. Virtual meetings I once led were mysteriously rescheduled when I was teaching at the university. Access to our cloud-based design systems, client files, even sustainability assessments, once immediately accessible, suddenly required special permissions. No explanations, no discussions, just a systematic distancing. Ethan Prescott had been implementing his digital transformation and market competitiveness strategy at Horizon Design since his arrival, constantly talking about data-driven decisions and ROI maximization. Translation: eliminate the veterans who remembered when the company stood for sustainable design excellence rather than quarterly profit margins. Still, I convinced myself it was just adaptation. I smiled through presentations about legacy thinking versus innovation mindset. I mentored new hires who could talk endlessly about optimization algorithms but couldn't explain basic principles of sustainable architecture to clients. I stayed late reviewing designs that sacrificed long-term quality for immediate cost savings. I should have trusted my instincts when Ethan started bringing his East Coast consultants through our offices like conquering heroes. When I glimpsed him and his CFO whispering over spreadsheets I couldn't access anymore. When terms like right-sizing and strategic realignment echoed through our once collaborative spaces. I stayed because I genuinely loved this place. Because I believed exceptional design would always be valued. Because after 19 years and countless award-winning sustainable projects, I thought I'd earned respect and a voice in our future. I was devastated to discover how wrong I'd been. They hadn't simply decided to replace me, they had methodically prepared for months. Carefully. Strategically. Ensuring that by the time my security badge was deactivated, I would be too isolated and marginalized to effectively challenge them. What Ethan didn't realize, what they all failed to understand, was that while they were systematically excluding me from meetings and revoking my digital access, my eyes were wide open. I was meticulously cataloging everything. And I had uncovered something significant, something they believed was safely hidden from scrutiny. As I hefted the box against my chest, I took one final look around the office space I had essentially designed from the ground up. Not with tears welling in my eyes. Not with burning anger. With something far more potent, a cold clarity they had inadvertently taught me. Never invest your heart in a place that treats you as expendable. And never exit without ensuring your legacy remains. Horizon Designs wasn't merely my workplace. It was my creation, my passion. I joined in 2005 when we operated out of a tiny two-room space above that quirky coffee shop in downtown Denver. Our initial team of 7 handled everything ourselves, from client presentations to sustainable material sourcing. We regularly pulled all-nighters, collaborating on sustainable design solutions over takeout and boxed wine until dawn. We supported each other through seemingly impossible deadlines with determination and laughter. Those days filled me with purpose and joy. As Horizon expanded, my influence grew alongside it. We relocated to progressively larger spaces, secured contracts with environmentally conscious developers, and pioneered sustainable urban renewal projects. Our reputation blossomed, sustainability awards, magazine features highlighting our LEED certified designs, architecture students requesting internships specifically to work with us. Throughout every milestone, I remained committed. When prestigious firms tried to lure me away, I declined. When financial crises forced budget cuts, I accepted reduced compensation. Because Horizon represented more than employment, it embodied my values and vision. I wasn't one for grandstanding or self-promotion. But whenever crises erupted, a sustainable materials shortage, structural complications, regulatory challenges, my phone rang first. When projects required innovative solutions balancing environmental impact with functionality and aesthetics, my expertise became indispensable. I never demanded accolades or special treatment. I simply dedicated myself to excellence. Day in, day out. Through changing seasons and evolving design trends. That steadfast commitment once commanded genuine respect. 2 years ago, when Ethan Prescott arrived as our transformational leader, the company's culture began shifting tangibly. At 42, he projected polished corporate confidence, constantly referencing his Harvard MBA and past consulting success. His vocabulary overflowed with East Coast business jargon about lean management and cost optimization and agile implementation strategies. His interest clearly wasn't in Horizon's legacy of sustainable design innovation. He focused on trimming expenses, implementing standardized systems, and creating impressive-looking quarterly presentations featuring sleek graphs that impressed shareholders but ignored long-term environmental impact. Initially, I maintained optimism. Perhaps some fresh perspective might complement our established values. Perhaps his efficiency models could enhance our commitment to sustainable design rather than replace it. I extended genuine offers to explain our integrated design approach. I volunteered to mentor the young analysts he recruited from his former consulting firm. I actively participated in marathon meetings dominated by discussions of maximizing ROI and scalable solutions while sustainability metrics slowly disappeared from presentations. Gradually, troubling patterns emerged. Sustainable projects I had nurtured for years were reassigned to recent graduates who prioritized cost-cutting over environmental impact. Client relationships I had cultivated through shared commitment to sustainable building practices were handed to sales-focused account managers. Design reviews that once required my sustainability expertise now bypassed my input entirely in favor of quick approvals. The digital exclusion escalated methodically. First, I received a notification that my access to the Sustainable Design database had been temporarily suspended during system updates. Next, the financial projections dashboard suddenly required enhanced authorization. Eventually, even the project scheduling platform I had personally helped develop years earlier locked me out with a message about streamlining user permissions. Each restriction seemed reasonable in isolation. Plausible. Just implementing better cybersecurity measures, they claimed. Optimizing workflow efficiency, they insisted. I immediately recognized the strategy for what it truly was: systematic isolation. The more they digitally quarantined me, the easier to label me as not adaptable to our digital transformation. The fewer sustainable projects bearing my digital signature, the simpler to justify terminating a non-essential legacy position. But Ethan and his efficiency experts overlooked one critical factor. You can revoke someone's system credentials. You can delete their name from meeting calendar invites. You can even strip away their professional title. But you cannot erase 2 decades of institutional knowledge. You cannot undo the expertise someone has developed through countless real-world challenges. I understood Horizon's operational framework on a level no efficiency algorithm could capture. Not just the polished presentations shown to clients, but the complex, sometimes messy realities of bringing sustainable designs to life when unexpected challenges emerged. I knew exactly where the structural compromises had been necessary, which sustainability certifications had required special accommodations, which contractors could be trusted when budget constraints tightened. More importantly, I knew precisely where to investigate when something felt wrong. Looking back, perhaps I should have resigned when the first exclusionary tactics appeared. Maybe I should have recognized the warning signs and avoided the humiliation of being escorted through the lobby like an intruder in the company I helped build. But I remained because deep in my heart, I still believed in the integrity of good design and sustainable principles. Those values didn't matter to them anymore. But they remained my core principles. And that fundamental difference would prove transformative. The moment I first spotted the irregularity wasn't dramatic or cinematic. It felt unsettling. I was reviewing emails from a longtime client who had reached out directly to me with concerns about recent material substitutions in their eco-friendly community center project, a flagship sustainable development I'd spent 3 years developing and securing. The client had attached photos showing conventional materials being used where we had specified sustainable alternatives. Confused, I attempted to access the project specifications database to verify the approved materials list. My login was immediately rejected, access restricted. I tried a different approach. Same rejection message. Perplexed, I messaged our IT department, assuming a system error. Their response appeared almost instantly. Access protocols have been reconfigured as directed by executive leadership. Please consult with your department supervisor for further information. No prior notification. No explanation. A wave of unease washed over me. They weren't even attempting to be subtle anymore. Over the following days, I began noticing more discrepancies. Client emails expressing confusion about project changes I hadn't authorized. Sustainability certifications being downgraded without proper documentation. Most troublingly, invoices for sustainability consulting services from a company I'd never encountered, Apex Solutions LLC. After 19 years at Horizon, I knew every reputable sustainability partner in the region. Apex wasn't among them. Yet suddenly their name appeared everywhere, attached to multiple project budgets, material procurement orders, timeline adjustments, always with substantial fees. I investigated further. Using my backup access to our cloud storage where historical procurement records were automatically archived, I tracked Apex's first payment, a seemingly innocuous $10,000 invoice for sustainability consulting on a small renovation project. Nothing that would trigger scrutiny. But the pattern quickly escalated. The following month, payments jumped to $75,000. 2 months later, $150,000. I combed through project documentation finding no tangible deliverables. No sustainability assessments. No implementation reports. Nothing but increasing sums flowing regularly from our accounts to theirs. My husband Daniel, with his accounting expertise, helped me analyze the pattern. This cash flow structure is designed to stay under automatic audit thresholds, he explained, pointing to the screen with concern in his eyes. An online business registry search revealed Apex Solutions' registered address, a WeWork shared office space less than 3 miles from Horizon's headquarters. Their sleek website contained stock photos of green buildings but no actual portfolio. No staff profiles. No legitimate industry presence. My heart raced when I discovered the ownership records. The revelation hit me with physical force. Apex Solutions was registered to Wesley Prescott, Ethan's younger brother. This wasn't merely unethical. It constituted clear-cut fraud. For several moments, I sat motionless in my home office, the blue light of my monitor illuminating my shocked expression. This wasn't about eliminating an outdated employee or cutting legacy positions. This was about systematically removing the one person whose sustainable design expertise and institutional knowledge made me likely to notice their elaborate embezzlement scheme. They hadn't underestimated my loyalty to Horizon. They had underestimated my commitment to sustainable principles, my professional integrity, my ability to detect corruption beneath glossy sustainability claims. Everything suddenly crystallized with perfect clarity. The influx of outside consultants with minimal sustainability credentials. The strategic digital access restrictions. The secrecy surrounding project budgets I had previously managed transparently. Ethan's carefully avoided eye contact during sustainability discussions at recent company meetings. I realized with absolute certainty they had orchestrated this elaborate scheme for months, systematically removing established environmental safeguards to facilitate their fraudulent operations. But they made one critical miscalculation. They assumed isolating me professionally would demoralize me. Instead, it fueled my determination. Rather than venting frustrations publicly, I had observed carefully. Instead of confronting them directly, I had gathered evidence methodically. Instead of destroying relationships, I had built an irrefutable case, one digital breadcrumb at a time. I possessed documentation. I had transaction timelines. I had concrete evidence. And perhaps most crucially, I maintained professional composure. You see, Vanessa Caldwell hadn't thrived for 19 years in an industry where sustainable architects were considered expensive luxuries through mere chance. I succeeded because I understood precisely when to construct something beautiful and when to wait patiently for the right moment to dismantle corruption so comprehensively that no one could deny witnessing its collapse. They believed my termination represented the conclusion. In reality, it merely marked the beginning. The night after uncovering the truth about Apex Solutions, sleep eluded me completely. I lay awake examining the ceiling, Denver's skyline casting dancing shadows through our bedroom blinds. Daniel, my husband, shifted position once beside me but asked no questions. After 23 years together, he intuitively recognized when I was processing something that required space. At 3:17 a.m., I quietly slipped out of bed and into my home office. I sat at my desk, fingers instinctively finding the brass compass that now rested on my desk. Find your true north. Tonight, those words weren't merely inspirational, they provided strategic direction. I couldn't approach this emotionally. I couldn't storm into Horizon brandishing accusations and evidence. They would instantly dismiss me as a bitter former employee with a personal vendetta. Discredit me. Silence me. Perhaps even legally threaten me. To make this truly effective, I needed to be more strategic. More precise. More impactful. First, I meticulously backed up everything with Daniel's help. Financial records. Electronic transfer documentation. Corporate registry documents connecting Apex Solutions to Ethan's brother. Internal communications that subtly revealed coordinated deception. I stored these digital files with redundant security measures. One set went to a password-protected cloud storage account with two-factor authentication. Another to an encrypted external drive locked in our home safe. The third to a secure digital vault Daniel's accounting firm used for sensitive client information. Excessive precaution? Perhaps. But after 19 years building sustainable practices, I understood the importance of system redundancy when critical infrastructure was at stake. Next, I formulated a comprehensive strategy. Horizon's quarterly board meeting was scheduled in 11 days. The timing couldn't be more perfect. Ethan would be presenting Horizon's record-breaking performance metrics to secure his substantial performance bonus. The moment was ideal to introduce evidence that would detonate precisely when the board's attention was most focused on financial results. Direct confrontation with the board remained premature. Instead, I'd let the documented evidence speak first, with complete anonymity. Using a forgotten administrator testing account that remained active, evidently their digital transformation overlooked proper system deprecation protocols, I composed a detailed communication. Professional. Factual. Measured. Subject: critical financial irregularities requiring immediate board investigation. No emotional language. No personal accusations. Simply methodical bullet points documenting suspicious transaction patterns, inflated sustainability consulting payments, and verifiable ownership connections between Apex Solutions and Ethan's brother Wesley. I attached the most compelling evidence, digitally secured, naturally. Decryption instructions would follow through a separate channel if requested. The documentation provided sufficient evidence to trigger legitimate investigation without immediately revealing my identity. I understood corporate governance dynamics intimately. Premature whistleblower identification would allow them to attack my credibility before the evidence received proper examination. This approach forced them to confront the documented facts first. The board included several sustainability-focused investors, individuals who genuinely valued environmental integrity, and none would risk their professional reputations or potential legal exposure by ignoring demonstrable fraud. Precise timing would be crucial. I scheduled the automated communication for exactly 9 a.m. on the morning of their board meeting, then leaned back in my ergonomic chair, watching Denver's lights reflecting against my window like distant environmental warning signals. Fear had dissolved, replaced by calm resolution. If Horizon had taught me anything during 19 years, it was that true sustainable architecture transcends surface aesthetics. It's about the structural integrity underneath. The hidden support systems. The invisible reinforcements ensuring buildings remain functional and environmentally sound long after trendy design elements become outdated. Ethan had constructed his corporate facade on fundamentally unsound principles. Soon, it would structurally fail with one precisely calculated intervention. The morning of the board meeting, I awakened naturally before dawn. No alarm necessary. My body seemed calibrated to the significance of this watershed moment when everything would transform. I prepared my morning coffee with deliberate attention, finding the methodical ritual calming to my heightened awareness. I dressed casually in comfortable jeans and a simple sweater. No need for corporate attire or professional accessories. I wasn't entering combat, I was observing an inevitable structural collapse from a safe distance. At precisely 9 a.m., the automated email deployed from the Forgotten Horizon Designs test account. By 9:12, my smartphone vibrated with an incoming call, an unrecognized number that likely belonged to the board secretary or legal department. I deliberately let it transfer to voicemail. Premature conversation would compromise my strategic position. Instead, I drove to a quiet independent cafe downtown, secured a secluded corner table, and opened my laptop. From this neutral location, I could track developments without being physically present during the inevitable implosion. At 9:43, a second notification appeared, an email from Horizon's chief legal counsel with the subject, confidential and urgent, request for information, immediate response required. I felt a flicker of satisfaction as I closed my laptop. Their urgent tone confirmed the evidence had landed with full impact. Inside Horizon's modern glass headquarters, the quarterly board meeting was undoubtedly proceeding. Ethan Prescott, likely standing confidently before the sustainability-themed backdrop, was probably midway through his polished presentation about operational efficiencies, digital transformation successes, and positioning Horizon for next-generation growth. He had no idea his carefully constructed narrative was about to crumble beneath him. By 10:08, information began flowing through my trusted network. A former finance colleague texted, "Something major happening. Ethan looks physically ill." Board members pulled him and CFO into executive session during his sustainability metrics presentation. By 10:27, news spread to the design department, emergency financial investigation launched. Board has frozen all external vendor payments, including immediate suspension of Apex Solutions contracts pending full forensic audit. This was merely the first tremor. At 10:52, my phone lit up with a message from a young lead-certified architect I'd mentored. Complete meltdown happening. They're calling it potential financial irregularities. Some of the junior staff who were forced to process those Apex invoices are breaking down. Total confusion everywhere. Let the disarray unfold. Let them experience even a fraction of the isolation and betrayal they so methodically inflicted on me and our sustainable design principles. While monitoring developments, I wasn't merely observing passively. I was implementing my secondary contingency plan, transferring additional documentation packages to secure digital repositories with timed release protocols. Each file set included comprehensive evidence with automated delivery triggers if I became unable to manage the process personally. Excessive precaution? Perhaps. But witnessing firsthand how rapidly sustainability values could be corrupted had taught me to implement robust backup systems. Shortly after noon, my former colleague in financial operations confirmed Ethan exited with 2 board members and legal counsel. Looked physically shaken. Executive team locked an emergency session with external auditors. By early afternoon, Horizon's normally active digital presence went completely silent. Their social media accounts, typically showcasing sustainable design projects and industry awards, posted nothing. No project updates. No sustainability announcements. No thought leadership articles. Their communication team was clearly engaged in crisis management. The board quickly recognized that what had been marketed as vendor consolidation for sustainability innovation was in reality a sophisticated embezzlement operation. Not merely a procedural error, a fundamental betrayal. A threat to investor confidence. A potential criminal violation. And the documentation trail connected directly to Ethan Prescott and his strategically positioned accomplices. I felt a measured sense of professional vindication spreading through me. This wasn't about personal vengeance anymore. It transcended individual grievances. It represented natural consequences. When you compromise design integrity. When you falsify sustainability credentials. When you betray professional trust. The structure inevitably fails. Around 2:15 p.m., my phone displayed an unknown caller. Against my better professional instinct, I accepted the call. Vanessa. The voice sounded constricted, almost strangled. Ethan. We need to discuss this situation, he said, his usual confidence conspicuously absent. I deliberately allowed the silence to expand, forcing him to continue speaking. I believe there's been some significant misinterpretation here. Perhaps we can find a mutually beneficial resolution without further organizational damage. I nearly smiled at the desperation cracking through his carefully cultivated executive persona. There's no misinterpretation whatsoever, Ethan, I replied with calm certainty. You fundamentally misjudged who you were dealing with. Before he could formulate a response, I ended the call. There would be no negotiation. No confidential arrangements. No ethical compromises. What had been corrupted needed exposure and accountability, not concealment. When I drove past Horizon's headquarters later that afternoon, the main entrance bustled with unfamiliar activity. Black SUVs. Legal representatives. External auditing teams. The young designers and architects inside were likely peering through the office glass walls, wondering what professional catastrophe had descended upon their seemingly invincible firm. I felt a momentary sympathy for them. Momentary. They hadn't created the corruption, but they had worked within its shadow too long, attempting to ignore the ethical compromises undermining their projects. Now the structural failures were fully visible. Now accountability was unavoidable. And this represented merely the initial phase. By the following morning, the repercussions had expanded beyond containment. Horizon Designs, once celebrated as Denver's sustainable architecture pioneer, faced comprehensive investigation. The board had acted decisively, with a speed that left Ethan and his collaborators no recovery options. Ethan Prescott received indefinite suspension pending complete forensic financial analysis. The CFO who had authorized the fraudulent payments was escorted from the premises without announcement or ceremony. 2 mid-level managers implicated in approving Apex Solutions invoices were immediately placed on administrative leave. The story spread across business publications within hours. Horizon Designs faces financial misconduct investigation, CEO suspended amid fraud allegations. While specific names weren't officially disclosed initially, internal sources provided sufficient details to trigger widespread industry speculation. Sustainable development clients paused active projects. Potential partners withdrew from negotiations. Recruiting firms began approaching Horizon's talented designers, recognizing professional vulnerability. The board implemented crisis management protocols, emergency strategic sessions, temporary spending restrictions, public commitments to accountability and transparency moving forward. But professional reputations, like sustainable structures, require substantial time for proper reconstruction once their foundation develops serious flaws. I observed these developments with professional detachment, drinking my Fairtrade coffee at home, my father's brass compass resting on my desk. Not with vindictive pleasure. Not with celebration. Simply acknowledging an essential truth: they hadn't merely underestimated my professional integrity. They had fundamentally misjudged the consequences of betraying the very sustainability principles and professionals that had established their success. Later that week, I received a formal communication from Horizon's legal department. A proposition. Return to Horizon not merely as a sustainable architect, but as Chief Ethics and Sustainability Officer. Complete executive authority to audit all operations. Direct reporting relationship to the board, circumventing standard management hierarchy. Independent operational budget. A mandate to rebuild the sustainable practices and ethical standards they had allowed to deteriorate. I studied the formal offer intently. This wasn't about vindication or retaliation. It was about purpose and principles. If I returned, it would be entirely on my terms. If I accepted their offer, it would be to ensure no other sustainable design professional ever experienced the systematic isolation and dismissal I had endured. Perhaps there remained something genuinely worth preserving. Not the profit-driven entity Ethan had attempted to transform Horizon into, but the sustainable design collaborative we had passionately built before short-term financial thinking contaminated our foundation. And if genuine reformation proved impossible? I was prepared to establish something entirely new. This time with sustainability principles firmly embedded in its core structure. With an ethical foundation that couldn't be compromised. Either way, the decision rested entirely with me. 3 months later, I walked confidently through Horizon's glass entrance, not as their employee, but as an independent sustainability consultant. The front desk associate immediately stood when she saw me, offering a respectful smile tinged with professional admiration. Former colleagues who once averted their eyes now made direct contact as I passed. What I recognized in their expressions wasn't apprehension. It was something far more valuable: genuine professional respect. The reconstruction process had commenced meaningfully. Ethical leadership had been installed. Ethan Prescott, the CFO, and their complicit managers no longer occupied positions of authority. They had become cautionary references in professional ethics discussions. The sustainable projects I now consulted on carried distinctly different energy. You could sense it immediately: the gradual restoration of environmental integrity, client trust, and professional accountability. The sustainable design principles we had established through countless design charrettes and late-night collaborative sessions were being rediscovered and reinforced, each element carefully reconstructed. I hadn't returned to recapture nostalgia. I was there to help architect something more resilient, more environmentally responsible, more ethically grounded, less vulnerable to corruption. Standing beside the expansive windows overlooking downtown Denver's evolving skyline, I touched the brass compass on the chain around my neck and permitted myself a moment of quiet satisfaction. Find your true north. That inscription had guided me through betrayal. It had centered me when the industry attempted to marginalize my experience. Now it illuminated something even more profound: sometimes professional growth isn't merely about maintaining position. Sometimes it requires recognizing precisely when to step away, and when to return with non-negotiable principles clearly established. Perhaps you've navigated similar professional crossroads, when commitment alone proved insufficient, when you faced the choice between clinging to compromised systems or creating something authentically aligned with your values. If so, understand this truth: leaving wasn't surrender. It represented strength in recognizing your professional worth. Our architectural visions don't collapse because we failed. They transform because we evolved beyond their original parameters.